Hey everybody, it's Rothbar's Disciple here. I am back once again with more videos to talk about Bitcoin. Today the topic is going to be the MetaNet. I've got a couple more videos planned, so stay tuned for those. I know it's been quite a while since I made a bunch of videos, but I sort of got, because of my attitude and the way I insult people, I got kicked out of a lot of talks with all the developers who I speak with. And so that is what it is. I'd much rather be honest than, tell people good things and just be a yes man. That's really given me a lot of problems as far as accomplishing the goals that I want to accomplish here within the world of crypto. But I decided I'd give it some time, let other people work on the projects they're working on, see if there's been any success. And one thing that's been kind of obvious with this recent run up in the price of Bitcoin, BTC, is that Bitcoin SV is kind of getting left behind. And that's sort of a shame because a lot of the things that they were poised to do, or it looked like they were poised to do a year ago, they just haven't accomplished and they haven't really done much. And a lot of that is because of a misunderstanding of the basics of what they're trying to do. So today I wanted to create a video talking about the MetaNet and just explaining the MetaNet and what it actually does and what it can't do. So first off, let's just explain what is the MetaNet. First, you got to understand the meaning of the word meta. It's concerning or providing information about members of its own category. So a lot of people talk about, you know, metaphysics, metaphilosophy, whatnot. Just the like for philosophy, metaphysics of philosophy or metaphilosophy is the discussion of philosophy itself and the philosophy of philosophy. And so whenever you are talking about a meta anything, you're just talking about um, the subject matter itself in a self-referential way. Okay, and then the next thing, MetaNet is a combination of two words, meta and the internet. And the internet's just a vast computer network linking smaller computer networks worldwide. And so if you're going to have a meta internet or a metanet, if you're going to be using the MetaNet must be a vast network linking internet networks globally. Now, the reason why this is important is because if you look at the internet, all the internet does is it links smaller computer networks worldwide. But that obviously allows for sort of middlemen and censorship and whatnot. And what you can put on the MetaNet, all of us who or anyone watching this video knows that what gets put on a blockchain is immutable or it lasts forever. But the whole point of what you would put on the MetaNet is those things that you would need if you wanted to ensure that your data wouldn't get censored or blocked by whoever or whatever in order to give people access to your data globally on different internets. And obviously, every country has their own internet rules. They're all kind of interconnected. The internet is a global network, but like if you look at China, Russia, and America, they all censor different things. In America, they censor right wingers like to an unbelievable extent. They actually censor right wingers off of payment services, internet payment services, internet social media sites, whatnot. And so the MetaNet can help solve problems like that. But you have to understand that the MetaNet does not replace the current internet. It's a network above the internet. So what the internet is to smaller computer networks, the MetaNet is to the internet. Okay, that's what it is. Um, a couple things you got to understand about the MetaNet is by storing data on every node, that's just the way blockchains work. The economics of the MetaNet are paramount. You have to minimize storage costs, okay? Because storage costs are always going to be more on the MetaNet than they will be on the internet, okay? And that's one of the biggest mistakes that BSV is making right now is they're assuming the MetaNet is the internet, and it's not. Okay, and so the method for minimizing these storage costs while keeping its integrity is through Merkle trees. It's just the exact same method that Bitcoin uses. It's always boggled my mind how, Bitcoin advocates can say we're going to create the MetaNet, but we're not going to use the same storage minimization and scaling attributes of Merkle trees that Bitcoin already uses within its blocks and transaction structure. Okay. Um, After explaining what the MetaNet is, we have to understand what the MetaNet does. And again, if we're linking, sort of internet networks globally, all the MetaNet does is it allows for easy transfer of data from one network to another. Okay, and so this means that the only data that you need to store on the metanet is the data necessary for network transfers. All right, so you don't need to store necessarily even the data itself. You just need to store a way so that if you're transferring data from one network to another network, you can ensure that you've actually got that data from the first network to the second network. Okay. Um, what the metanet allows amateurs to do is it allows them to perform complex data transfers over networks. And the reason why I put amateurs here is because if you're a big corporation, a massive corporation like Facebook or Google or Amazon, you can do complex data transfers. It requires a lot of contracts and whatnot, but they've got this reputation so that when you're dealing with Amazon, Google, or Facebook, whoever, you can trust them. But they have to be a big enough company for you to trust. You wouldn't do like if there was a new version of Facebook that just started, you wouldn't necessarily trust them the way that you trust Facebook or anybody like that because you have little recourse for amateurs on the internet. Okay, and so by allowing for real-time contractual data transfers, you remove data middlemen. Okay, and so the data middlemen are these people like Facebook, Google, or Amazon. And it's not to say that the metanet will like eliminate their business, but it just means that they do not have this monopoly control over networks. Okay, and so all that means is that any amateur trying to work with another amateur, if they use the metanet, because everything is stored there globally, and you can transfer the data between networks, and no one can deny the information that is on the metanet. Um, you don't have to trust the person that you're working with. So the trust that you have for Facebook, Amazon, or Google, it's much easier applied to amateurs. And this removal of the middlemen and trust from these IP transfers lowers costs over 100 times. So like I said before, Amazon, Facebook, Google, they all have these economies of scale, and they have these lawyers that work for them. Amateurs, if they were try to do the same contractual transfers that Amazon, Google, or Facebook do, it can cost them millions of dollars, and you can actually get away with making this cost pennies using the metanet. And so what this does is it untaps vast markets in the digital industries, okay? And it's all using the same infrastructure. And just so you guys know, a proper functioning metanet is not nearly as complex as trying to build a new internet within Bitcoin, which is what the Bitcoin SV devs are doing right now. Okay, all you need for a metanet is a website and a token system. That's literally it, and we already have those. I really wish James Felding would release this token system. It's phenomenal. I thought he should have released it the day he gave it to me for beta testing. Um, Still hasn't released it though, and that's really a big mistake. So let's go ahead and start talking about examples. You guys know I've tried to explain to you guys how to use the metanet for my own personal projects that I'm working on, but people always misinterpret what I start saying then, and they call my metanet ideas my board game project, and it really irritates me, to be honest, because one, the projects I'm working on, the board game in particular that many of you are familiar with, that's one bit of merchandise for this big sci-fi fantasy series that I have, and that's one piece of merchandise for this massive story. And so they don't even get that right. But two, it's not an idea even for my sci-fi fantasy story. And all the merchandise associated with it. It's an idea for data transfer and a new way of transferring data between people who are trying to create a business. Okay, and so you got like absolutely everybody is missing the mark by such a staggering distance that it really boggles my mind. So let's look at different things that you guys might actually be familiar with. The first thing we're going to be talking about is RuneScape. It's a massively popular yet simple MMO RPG. It sort of competes with things like World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft. They've got different mechanics. World of Warcraft, you move with your keyboard buttons, and then RuneScape, it's like a point-and-click game. Um, but RuneScape itself could really benefit from something like the metanet. I'm sure World of Warcraft could as well. I'm less familiar with that though, so I chose RuneScape as my example here. And just as one small example, using one small segment of the game of RuneScape, it has a multitude of armor pieces and stats associated with those pieces. So if you look at one of these pictures here, this is just some of the armor that the game offers, and there are 7 main armor categories for melee armor, and there's melee range or melee I think it's melee. There's melee, ranged, and magic armor. The 7 main melee armor types have 25 pieces, each with 14 stat categories. And so if you're looking at this here, that's a lot of different data points that can be changed in a lot of different ways to interact in different ways. And it's really hard if you have 7 main melee armor types with 25 pieces and 14 stat categories. The weapons themselves have four or five additional attributes, and those are the speed of the weapons and the attack styles. Other than the 7 main melee armor types, there's 13 additional melee armor types that have between 3 and 11 pieces with the same 14 stat categories. So if you just do the math there for trying to balance these and the number of stat categories that you have, it's a phenomenal number of stat categories, and it's really impossible for one development group to try and balance these items. Okay, and if you actually ever played RuneScape, one thing you'll know is that they're not balanced at all. There's usually one or two weapons or armor types that you will use, and that's basically it. And it's really kind of dumb because they have all of this potential to use all these different armor types and weapons for different circumstances, but they don't. Okay, and so what are the problems for RuneScape that the Metanet solves? Well, the changing of the stats of these armor types, if you just look at that picture, it's literally just numbers. So you can change these numbers very easily. It's just, delete the number that's there, enter a new number, and you're good to go, right? Changing the stats is easy, but testing the weapons for balance is hard because there's a huge number of different ways you fight either monsters or other players within RuneScape. And depending on the scenario, like you don't want to give any weapon too much power or too little power. It's got to work in many different scenarios, right? Or it's got to work. Yeah, it's got to work in many different scenarios, not be overpowered or severely underpowered in any of them. Okay. Now the RuneScape community is very large. But the developers can't trust amateurs with game data, whether it's because they don't want viruses being inserted in the game data and sort of ruining the reputation of their game if somebody plays an alternate version of RuneScape and gets viruses and maybe gets their identity stolen or whatever it is. And beyond that, you don't want to give amateurs too much of the game data because then they can start trying to break the game through glitches or whatnot if they see how it actually works under the hood. So what you can do is you can actually, through the metanet, you can ensure changes made by amateurs are secure. And the way that you would do this is you would create hashes of the data for all the in-game items, and there's thousands upon thousands of in-game items. And then you would create Merkle trees for all of it. And you'd actually do this for not only all of the game's items, but the monsters, like, the scenery, whether it's trees or the ground, like everything that is included in the game's coding, you would hash all that, each of the individual items, and then put those hashes together to get the RuneScape game's full hash. Now, what the developers then for RuneScape can do is they can release tools for amateurs to change item attributes, and then if they do this, it's very easy to check the hash of these new developers and the changes they've made to the RuneScape developers game against the original code, because all that they're changing is these individual stats, and so you can check to see that they haven't actually inserted any viruses or anything like that. And a lot of this might be done actually through the RuneScape developers, especially if they release tools for amateurs to change these in-game item attributes. But by doing this, all these changes made by the amateurs are secure and free from viruses. Okay, so this is a really big deal because it allows amateurs to work for these RuneScape developers, and they don't even necessarily need to be paid. They could be paid, but there's so many people that play the game, they would probably do it for free. Okay, and again, this is incredibly I don't want to say important, like it's important for the RuneScape developers or the creators of this game because the weapons have never been balanced. If you've ever played the game, there's one type of melee weapon that you always use until you get to a very high level. When you start getting into the more unique items, and it's a scimitar. And there's so many other weapons that have a potential to be used, but all you ever use is a scimitar. And it's really kind of stupid. It's like, why wouldn't you ever use these other weapons? And it's because balancing them, it's not that easy to do. And they have many different attack styles, whether you're using a slashing weapon, a crushing weapon, a stabbing weapon, things like this. And different armor types have different defense values against these weapons. But it's really irrelevant for when you're playing. It really is irrelevant. You just basically use the same armor and weapons all the time, no matter what. And the community itself could balance these weapons and save the devs thousands of hours. And beyond this, beyond just weapons, there's thousands of monsters with their own stats and loot drops. There's 23 skills that have hundreds of items created by each of these skills and experience points rewarded when you create these items using these skills. Each item dropped and each experience drop from creating, or each item dropped by a monster and the experience drops from creating items with your skills. It can be altered by the amateurs to improve the game. And it's really simple to do. And if the RuneScape developers use hash tokens, they would just create hash tokens that they would give to reputable people within their community, and these hash tokens would give them access. Like they would go to a website to download the tools to start messing with RuneScape and creating their own versions of the game with altered statistics. And if they had the token, they can download the game, or they can download the application to alter the game. If they don't have the hash token, they can't. But because it's done through hash tokens, anyone who creates a new altered version of RuneScape, if it ends up being used in the game, that hash token that they originally were given, all that they will do is they'll alter the hash on the token to represent their version of the game. And if it ends up being used by players, by paying community members or paying players, they could actually make money for it, or at least get credit. And if you're using hash tokens, the cost of this is pennies for all parties, even RuneScape, who created the game. And I'm sure all the data they have for their game is, you know, gigabytes, probably hundreds of gigabytes. But even the hundreds of gigabytes that they have, if they're hashing it all together through Merkle trees, it's one final root hash, which means it's, fractions of a penny for them to create hash tokens. And then they send out these hash tokens. For every one hash token they send, yeah, it's a fraction of a penny. But if they're selling an application that allows people to alter the game of RuneScape, they'll make money from it, and the cost is basically nothing. Okay. Um, and that's just one game. You can apply this to any game that you've ever played. There's always stats and attributes to weapons or skills or monsters that can always be changed to improve games. And to be quite frank, just there's only so many man hours that developers actually have. And so the MetaNet in gaming is it would be absolutely massive, but instead what the Bitcoin SV community is trying to do right now is they're trying to put the entire game on the MetaNet, and that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay, so we really need to stop that. We really need to start using hashes. One thing that's actually come up recently is, I think it's called like Crypto Fights or Cryptoverse. I don't remember. No, maybe it's Chronoverse. It's some gaming platform that Calvin Ayre recently invested in, and they're doing every action in game. They're putting it on the blockchain, and this is a big problem because if you look at something like it, let's go back to RuneScape again. RuneScape works by a system whereby every 6/10 of a second, that is what they call an in-game tick, and the in-game tick is it's the time period, the smallest time period that the game recognizes. So everything happens within these ticks. So every 6/10 of a second, your input does something. And so if you're doing something, like, you're not obviously creating a new input every 6/10 of a second, but let's say you create a new input every 4 ticks. That's basically 2.5 seconds. Over the course of playing a game for an hour or so, you're going to be putting thousands of things on the blockchain, and the cost of playing that game it's going to be immensely high. It could be dollars a day. And you can't do that. You cannot. This is again why the MetaNet efficiency is key for it, because you can't make people pay extra for stuff that they already do now and expect them to actually use the product. It won't ever work. Okay, but moving beyond gaming, let's look at the MetaNet and YouTube, how it works, or how the MetaNet would work for YouTube. YouTube's just a collection of amateur video makers, editors, and talented individuals, whether it's singers, comedians, whatever it is that they do. And very few of these YouTube creators possess all the skills necessary to go viral. A lot of them possess one of these skills, like they might be a good singer, but they might suck at video editing, not really know how to do thumbnails, not have good intros, things like this. But if they were to be able to work together with other creators, they could actually help other creators and themselves go viral. And the problem is that these creators can't really work together, especially because if you work with amateur creators on YouTube, you'll actually see a lot of videos detailing this. A lot of these people who try to do this, they get scammed. Even when they're working with big name YouTubers, they get scammed, whether it's because of a misunderstanding of the contract that they have with each other, or it's just one person trying to be malicious. There's not much that these amateurs can do because it's hard for them to create a paper trail of everything they've done. That creates a lot more work for them. But if they were using something like hash tokens, it's very easy to create a legal trail if one of the parties commits a crime, because in order to work with the other party, you have to first send them a hash token, and the hash token will have a hash of the contract that they're using in their interaction together. Okay, so rather than trying to have one person store the contract and keep all the data and keep records of when they first started interacting with this person, if they just have a hash token that they send to somebody that has all of the contract data within that hash token, in order for them to prove that they've worked with somebody and that that person didn't fulfill the contract, all that they have to do is prove that that person has a token in their wallet associated with them, and that token that token is the hash token that stores a contract for the work. Okay, and so it would be done automatically. The records would be kept immutable on a blockchain, and so there's no way um, anybody could really get out of scamming somebody. If you were to scam somebody, obviously people could still try and they could potentially do it, but it just makes it so much easier from the standpoint of an honest amateur working with somebody else, that, hey, I've got recourse if this person tries to scam me, okay? And then more importantly, actually, than trying to go after somebody who commits a crime, is that amateurs actually have an indisputable record to prove their reputation. So if they're actually an honest worker who has worked with a lot of people and, um, upheld their end of the contract, they have a way to prove it. And they can say, well, if you look at all the tokens I have from all these people from these contracts that I've completed, maybe they've got 100 or so tokens, so they've worked with 100 different people. And so it's like, well, this guy seems to have a good reputation, and so he'd be worthy of working with. Um, and what this would allow for within YouTube is you'd actually create a new type of YouTube. I've actually talked with developers before trying to get them to create this, and they won't, even though we have video streaming platforms and whatnot. They won't create this. I don't know why. But anyways, instead of trying to learn video editing, thumbnail creation, and whatnot, there's a lot more to it, like whether or not maybe it's just some musician who has great music, but they don't really know how to make music videos or something like that. Maybe they want to work with somebody who shows them how to make music videos and whatnot. But these creators can specialize, and then after they've specialized, they can now hire out other amateur specialists for what they're not specialized in. Okay, and obviously there still will be people who do everything, but not everybody would have to. And again, the hash tokens, it's immutable, so the contractual guarantees of the token, they're eternal. Okay, and so what that means beyond just being able to go after somebody who scammed you is if you actually are new, if you're a new amateur trying to make a name for yourself, you're probably going to be working for free for a while. Okay, but if you create a token that says, hey, this video is going to be maybe the contract says, hey, we know this video is not going to make money now, but if one of us makes it big, like let's say you've got some video makers working together to create a music video, and it's a small artist, so nobody knows about him. It's not going to get many views. But if that artist were to take off, then this video would get a lot of views. You can keep that token that has a contractual guarantee of who gets what profits if it does take off. Okay, and so you don't have to pay attention to this person. And their career. You have that token forever, and the payment could be like the contract can give you an address with which you would deposit the money that or the bitcoins that would be the profit that is due to this person, and it can all be automatic, and you don't have to really remember everything. There's a lot of paperwork and just filing things that goes on with any sort of profitable business. And with tokens, it all becomes automated, and it removes what the Bitcoin Metanet does is that it removes the need for creators to trust each other. Okay, it just says, hey, I've got this token, so if I want to give you this data for you to manipulate and try and do something with it to create a new content, whether it's I could just give you the music for a song, and I want a music video out of the song. Um, it removes this trust by just saying, hey, once I've given you the token, now I have a means of recourse to come after you if you try and scam me. Okay. Um, and so that's very interesting, especially because tokens can be made for creators uh, to remake the work of other creators for profit, which is actually what we're going to talk about here in this next slide, the metanet and storytelling. Okay, so storytelling and the metanet, it opens up a very unique untapped market, and that is copyleft storytelling. Now, most people don't really know what copyleft is. Copyleft it's a form of copyright, I guess. Without copyright, there is no copyleft, but it's a reciprocal IP contract, as an intellectual property contract, wherein all the distributors are bound to the same contract. And this is very important for something like the metanet, because if you're offering out your content for other people to remake into something and make profit off of it, the way that you do this, and the way that you do this easily, is you say, okay, obviously, the original content creator, on what they release, they own 100% of that. But then you would say, if someone else wants to alter this, like let's say you're making a video, or music video, you would say, okay, I've created the music, I own 100% of the music. But if someone creates a music video and releases this music video on YouTube, then the original music creator would say own, I don't know what industry standards are, but let's say they own 50% of the profits from that music video, and the creator of the music video owns 50% of the profits. Something like this, okay? And so what this allows, it allows anyone to work on the work of other people and tell it in their own way. And where this gets super interesting, okay, is that you can actually make full remakes of the original story, whatever that story is, whether it's music, videos, whether it's a book. If you actually look at something that it's actually very interesting, one of the most popular shows right now, Game of Thrones, it's had an absolutely terrible past few seasons. This last season's been god awful, and people actually are trying to get uh, the last season to be remade. They don't like it. There's this petition that's garnered, it was around 300,000. It might be close to 500,000 signatures at the time that this video is released, but a massive amount of people wanted the story remade. Okay, and so what you can actually do with the metanet and storytelling is, if George R.R. Martin, and one of the interesting facts about Game of Thrones is that George R.R. Martin has kind of said he's dissatisfied with the way that the show is going. It's not really what he wanted them to do, but they did it anyways. If George R.R. Martin had put a copyleft license on Game of Thrones when he gave it to the HBO studios, what that would have allowed him to do is, it would have said, okay, here's the Game of Thrones or here's the HBO version of Game of Thrones, but other people can remake the series of Game of Thrones. Now, obviously, the HBO series of Game of Thrones was incredibly popular for most of its seasons, so those would probably, I mean, obviously, it's made a massive amount of money from those seasons, and deservingly so, but with this last season, they've kind of shit the bed, and there's nothing anyone can do. George R.R. Martin is stuck with that, tarnishing the reputation of his work, and the consumers are stuck with this disappointing ending that Game of Thrones has had. Okay, and so if he had a copyleft license on it, George R.R. Martin, uh, he could allow anyone to remake the last season's or the last season of Game of Thrones, or whatever it is that this person wants to do. Any amateur could just say, hey, I want to remake this, whether it's they're just going to write the story and hope it gains enough traction within the Hollywood studios and whatnot in order to get professional actors, or maybe they just do it with amateur actors, however they want to do it. But with copyleft storytelling, the person who is telling the story is not the only person who is able to use the story for profit. Now, you might say to yourself, well, this will hurt creators of content, and that's not actually true. Because if you look at something like George R.R. Martin, what HBO has done to him has really hurt his brand. It's hurt his brand to an incredible extent. And so he's actually stuck between a rock and a hard place because he's going to lose fans for this, and it's not something that he did. Okay, and so if he used Copyleft, he would be free to let somebody else distribute, um, a Game of Thrones TV version that he would more agree with. Okay. Um, and so it actually opens up the potential for profit because obviously there are some people who like this last season of Game of Thrones. Mainly it's people who really like Game of Thrones, so they don't want to say anything bad about it. But it allows you to tell a story multiple times for profit. So if you're just increasing the number of stories told that can be sold for profit, you're increasing the profit of everybody involved. The only people who stand to lose are those people who are bad at telling stories. Okay. And so this is actually one of the biggest things for me because that all my projects that I've been working on personally are for, like, I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer, and so I really want to use the MetaNet for copyleft licensing through hash tokens, and so this is really big for me. I think this is the biggest thing that the MetaNet offers because it's a completely new thing that nobody's ever done before. But again, it's what I have been planning on using Bitcoin for, so I'm a little biased. But the last thing that I really want to talk about is the realities of the MetaNet because what Bitcoin SV is trying to do does not work for any of this. So if you're using the MetaNet as described earlier, it exponentially grows the worldwide data usage. So if instead of just having one version of Game of Thrones, you have multiple, or one version of RuneScape, you have multiple, or one version of YouTube videos, you have multiple different versions of YouTube videos. You exponentially grow the amount of data by definition. Okay, and so if you use Craig Wright's method, which is, put the data on chain, like all of the data without using hashes, a metanet's not mathematically possible. You need over exabyte size blocks, which is over 1 billion times larger than we have now, and you probably need even larger than that. So we're still, 9 to 12 orders of magnitude too small. So if you want to do anything within the next decade, hashes are vital. I'm utilizing these hashes in Merkle trees. Um, any global industry that you can think of, it can be onboarded for between 100 megabytes and 1 gigabyte. Some of them might be smaller, or slightly larger, but that's about what it comes out to, just because the amount of output that any one creator can come up with in one day. Um, and so we can already put these on chain and scale global industries today. Especially considering that a lot of these global industries that we would be creating would be completely new, so they wouldn't start out at 100 megabytes or 1 gigabyte. They'd start off small and then they'd grow. And if they started out small and then they grew, the developers would actually have the funding and whatnot in order to pay for everything that they're trying to do as far as scaling is concerned. Okay, and so Bitcoin's having it doesn't give us decades to hope for a scaling miracle because we're not going to get 9 to 12 orders of magnitude growth in scaling. Probably even within a decade. We'd be lucky to get it within a decade. Okay. And we've already had over a year wasted on CSW's vision of the MetaNet, and we've really had nothing come from it. And I said this before, but a true MetaNet requires much less work than CSW's MetaNet. All you need is a website and tokens. CSW, Craig Wright, he's trying to reinvent the internet and do all the work of creating a new internet, and that's just so stupid and it's so wasteful. Why not just create a simple website and tokens that can be done in under a week by any competent developer and then do a hash-based metanet? It's something that I really don't understand. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There will be more videos coming out. I'm going to try and steer away from talking about just the bad things within the crypto world as of right now, because I've been talking about these things forever, and nobody's done absolutely anything to change it. So I still want to talk about them, but it'll get kind of boring if I keep repeating myself on the same issues going on within the world of Bitcoin. So I'm going to stop doing all that to some extent, and I'm going to start talking about different educational aspects within Bitcoin, a lot of things that people don't really understand. One of them is actually going to be transaction ordering, because one of the interesting things about a hash-based metanet is that a natural ordering, which technically speaking Bitcoin SV right now uses topological ordering. A natural ordering is actually ideal for a hash-based metanet. So something like Bitcoin Cash is less ideal for a hash-based metanet because it's not in a natural order. They changed the order to alphanumeric or ABC order, and that's not ideal for something like a hash-based metanet. So it's really one thing that's really bothered me about the way Craig Wright is trying to create a metanet is he's not taking advantage of some of the defining features of Bitcoin SV, and everybody just goes with it because they think he's Satoshi, and I don't know. It's really stupid, but anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. There will be more coming out soon.